Well, hello there, amazing entrepreneurs. I am excited to get into today's episode because we are going to talk about something that I get asked all the time. Marketing. Jaclyn Mullen is our guest today, and marketing is something that both of us really love. Marketing tends to be this huge umbrella of actions and things that we need to do as business owners. But in this episode, we're going to talk about a different way to think about marketing and building the relationships and actually connecting with your audience in ways that you never thought possible. Because when you can connect with someone, you're going to reach those dream clients, the clients you love to work with, that value what you do and want to work with you. Today's show is going to blow you away, and I would love it if you would go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. The reviews take a few minutes. I know it's an effort on your part, but they truly mean so much to us when we're putting together content and help to grow your business. The show notes for this and all episodes with all links and books and resources mentioned can be viewed at www.businessstraightupodcast.com. Yes, I know it's long, but it's all one word and super easy to type out. I know you can do it. So feel free to visit for the show notes. And without further ado, let's talk marketing. Hey there, awesome people. I am Brooke Summer, and you are listening to Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs to learn, connect, grow, and build the business and life that they dream of. Welcome, let's get going and dive right in. Hello, awesome entrepreneurs. Welcome. Today I have an amazing guest, Miss Jaclyn Mullen, live from California. And I want to talk a little bit about marketing today. And she is so good at this. We're going to talk about other stuff too, but it all kind of fits under that big umbrella. So thank you so much for being here, Jaclyn. Welcome.
Brooke, thank you for having me, and to everybody tuning in, hello from, I hate to say, gray Los Angeles, California. We usually have sunny 70-degree weather, but on the day that we are recording this, it's just a little overcast. So I'm excited to talk about marketing and everything else that comes up. I feel like
marketing is such a huge umbrella, and there's so many things that go under it. And it's just, there's so many little hats that we all have to wear when it comes to being in business and growing our business, that it can be overwhelming at times.
Well, and I think too that the definition or the understanding of what marketing is becoming so diluted. You know, just to prep for this, I looked it up because marketing has always been something that I have loved. And I was like, it's gotten so, like I said, diluted or changed with like the advent of online marketing that I think we really forget what marketing was created for. And if you go and look up marketing on Google, Wikipedia, any of those sources, you're going to see that marketing talks about relationships. Yes. The true definition of marketing is building relationships with your customer and being as integral to the business as, the operation of the business or sales. So marketing is the study and management of exchange relationships. And I think that that's where people are starting to get a little like, I hate marketing, or marketing doesn't work for me, because they don't know that it's not just about being in one place or always being online. It's about creating a relationship.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. I feel like that gets lost in so many of these tasks that we get bogged down with, and it can be really overwhelming, and we forget that. So tell me a little bit about you. Where do you come from? What do you do? What makes you an expert in this? Because I know that you have an amazing background.
I would say I have a varied background, which, certainly helps. Quick little backstory. I grew up in the DC area, so East Coasters in the house. I was the byproduct of two parents from New York who moved down to the DC area. And my mom's parents had immigrated to the United States. And, I grew up in a very business savvy family. My dad was in charge of a transport company. My mom actually at the time was a facilitator and leader for Weight Watchers and was, a public speaker in that regard. And my mom's parents had their jewelry store. So business was always something that just, I grew up with. But I also, from a very young age, my mom put me in dance class at the age of 2. And throughout my youth and even my late teens and early 20s, I was a performing artist. Like I totally cultivated cultivated my natural talent, which is singing, paired with the dancing. But, in about ninth grade or so, I heard about this club that was called DECA. And in ninth grade, it was when I really started to think about how would I be able to make money as artist, as a musician. I was reading about TLC at the time and how they had gone bankrupt, even though they had a hit single. I was like watching what P. Diddy was doing with all of his endeavors. And it dawned on me that, in order to be an artist and to actually make money and to, be secure financially, you have to understand the business piece of this. So that's when I started actually studying marketing and working in marketing jobs. Like that DECA club gave us credit for having a job in high school outside of school. So I started in retail, and at that level, and back in that day, we didn't have computers. We didn't have, the internet had just come about. So I would say my first foray into marketing was in what you call like more grassroots or experiential marketing. And it was all about how do you create an experience with the customer? How do you connect with the customer? How do you understand what your customer wants? How do you wow your customer? And from there, I just continued to study marketing because I was like, all right, music isn't a definite end result for being able to make money or buy a house or any of that stuff. Now this is now pre-internet, now internet Jaclyn sees differently, but back then you had a record label controlling, right, how you got your content out or how you monetized it. So I was like, marketing seems just as creative. And the other thing that I liked about it was I started looking at the customers, if you will, as different audiences. So from a performing artist standpoint, I was like, that's really understandable to me. Each of these is a different performance. Each of these is a different audience I'm trying to connect with. And from there, I actually went to college in Miami at the University of Miami. I went to junior college first, or community college first, because I didn't want to take on, student loan debt. Went to the University of Miami, studied music business with a minor in marketing, and all of a sudden the internet took off. And so I've kind of been riding the internet marketing wave when it first, started off as like reputation management, way before we ever had Facebook. I mean, this is like MySpace day and age, and people were just figuring out how to do experiential marketing. And then over the past 10 years, I always had jobs in marketing. And then in the past, 7 to 10 years, I've been working for myself as a, marketing mentor, as a marketing consultant. And these last few years, really, really teaching marketing to our up and coming marketing professionals, as well as people who are out there trying to market their products and are just frustrated and falling out of love with it. Really. That's the Cliff's Notes version.
I love that. I love that you said thinking of different audiences to connect with from a performing arts standpoint, because I have a performing background as well. And that audiences are very different. You might have an audience that's more interactive, and the way that you behave in front of that audience will be very, very different, even if you're performing the same material.
Absolutely,
Makes
for sure.
Sense. And I know that you're really strong with marketing, and I feel like so many people are overwhelmed by marketing. Kind of like we had talked about earlier, it's just so many things to do between social media and networking and all of these fun things. So what do you think are 3 top marketing tools right now in 2018 that a creative can use to grow their business without a huge budget?
Well, I'm telling you, just to maybe build on what you shared, what I'm really good at is building relationships, right? And there's a difference between marketing and marketing tactics. Overall, what we're looking to do is really connect and build that relationship. And then the tactics are the tools that we use to make that happen. So social media isn't marketing to me. It's a tactic. It's one way of many ways that you can connect with your customer. And I share that because, why are there so many marketing experts? Those experts, are knowledgeable with regard to the tactic itself, but some are going to be better at the relationship side and the retention side and the story and the messaging side, while others are going to be really, really strong in the performance side. And that's where people get overwhelmed because they're like, what type of marketer am I? Or what type of marketing tactics do come naturally to me? What type of marketing tactics do I need for my business that I might have to enlist in somebody else's like strength or help or expertise. And that's where everybody's like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? So with regard to tools, the first thing you really need to start with is, who are my different audiences? And you said it so eloquently, like in marketing lingo nowadays, we call that segments. So you're not talking to the exact same group of people. Like traditionally it was, oh, we're talking to women 18 to 45. But nowadays, with the advent of digital, some of those women 18 to 45 are going to spend a lot of time on their desktop computer. Some of those women are only going to be engaging on their mobile device. Some of those women tend to be on one social media platform. Some of those women would much rather skip the social media rabbit hole and listen to what their friends share or tell them. So there's a tool that we use at the school that I teach for, and it's called an empathy map. But you can also do this with Pinterest, actually. You can create a visual representation of like 3 segments that you could be talking to. And for those of you that are just starting out your business, you might be saying, how do I even create this vision board of my customer, right? Like, how do I create that mood board, if you will? Sometimes you take your experience from working in a previous job or business. Sometimes you take why you created your business to begin with, a friend saying, oh my God, you're so good at this. Like, you totally need to monetize this and make a business from this. And if you're an existing business owner, you should have some information on your customers and your clients and what they want. And instead of all that information being in your head or solely on your Facebook insights or Instagram, start to extract that data, that feedback, all that textual stuff that you have, and put it into this mood board or this vision board or this persona or segment. So first things first, you have at least 3 different segments of customers that you're marketing to, and your job as that marketer is to figure out, who are these different people that I'm talking to, and how can I put them together in these, pillars, if you will. I would say, the second thing is, listen, you have to be patient. Like, I know you're like marketing and patience. Patience is a marketing tool. But even I, as somebody, and Brooke, you as somebody who, we go to conferences, we take all the training. Things take longer than you hope, would anticipate, expect. So I'm going to tell you, unlike other marketers out there, you have to have patience. I want you to be optimistic, and I want you to believe that anything is possible, but I want you to also have a really strong patience so that if something doesn't work out in the time frame that you need it to, you don't go sabotage everything that you've done and say, to hell with this, that you say, okay, how do I optimize this? What do I do to make this better? What can I learn from this? Which my last little tool I would share then would be, how do you track what's happening with regard to your marketing? How do you, review the information that you have? You might have an email software provider. You might have WordPress and Google Analytics, but do you create like a monthly recap or a report that tells you this is everything that you tried? And from a creative standpoint, from a content standpoint, and from a result standpoint, this is what happened. Because without that, you cannot figure out what's working for you and what isn't working for you. So those are my 3 things.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love that. So I'm just going to kind of go back to all of them because I love them all and I want to repeat them. So the first one, the empathy map, we actually just talked about building your ideal client profile and how it's not what everyone tends to talk about it is. Like, it's not an age group or it's not an income bracket. It is people that are facing certain things, and looking at them in a visual way and creating that empathy map and that vision board is amazing. I love that idea because there are certain things that our ideal clients will be drawn to from a visual perspective, and knowing that can be so powerful in how you reach out to build that relationship. Absolutely. And being patient, yes. We look at someone who is so far ahead of us and say, well, I'm not there. Clearly, I'm not as good as this person. And it's never going to happen for me. And then you sabotage and you kick yourself around and beat yourself up. And that patience is so important. I've been doing what I do for a while. You've been doing what you do for a while. It's not an overnight success. It takes time. It takes patience. And patience is so hard. So hard.
Oh, it's a practice, right? It's something you got to try every single day.
And measuring, I kind of want to go a little deeper into as well, because we had talked about previously that creatives sometimes will look at the business side of the business and think of it as completely separate from the creative side of their business. And from like a neuroscience standpoint, yes, we have one side of the brain that is more creative and one that is more analytical, and that makes sense. But business doesn't have to be one or the other. And to look at those analytics and those measurements and say, well, I didn't really get the results that I was looking for in this tool. How about we get creative with figuring out where I can better put my efforts? And that measuring is so important. And it kind of does fit in with that creative, because people ask me all the time, what can I do? And I can give you a marketing plan, but you can't copy what I do. What I do is building relationships, and I measure those things, and I know what works for me because of me. And so measuring what works for you is so insanely important. So how can a creative balance this? I want to be creative. I want to decorate cakes or take pictures or do whatever they do and still feel like they're feeding their artsy side while managing the day-to-day operations that are required to run a business.
Well, I love that question, because I will say, like anything else, if you try to do too much at once, it's going to feel overwhelming and you're going to hate it. And what I mean by that is, let's say you love to build cakes and all of your friends have commissioned you to create cakes for their significant other, their birthday party, their children's birthday party, their aunt, cousins. You get the gist of it. Now you're like, I can have a business creating cakes. So most people, what do? They go and buy a domain. They take a bunch of pictures of the cakes and they quickly launch a website without thinking about, how much does the cake need to cost? How much do the ingredients actually cost me for the cake? How many cakes do I need to sell every month in order to be profitable, right? Like there's a certain amount of cakes I have to sell to break even. There's a certain amount of cakes I have to sell to be profitable. So what I'm going to tell everybody, first things first, if you're coming from that creative side and you're excited about the vision of your business, stick with that. That's great. Now pair it, per your point, with some of the more logical aspects of business, which are, cash flow, accounting. Before you even get into understanding marketing metrics, there was a book that I read many years ago that truly helped me start to embrace that side of my brain. And it was Smart Women Finish Rich by David Bach. And, he's had a series of books since then, Smart Couples Finish Rich, but he had this terminology that was like, what's your latte factor? For every day that you go to Starbucks and spend $5 or $6 on a latte, if you were to take that and multiply that times, 5 days a week, times 4, times 52 weeks in a year, how much money does that add up to? And I feel like for creatives, what we first have to really grasp or try to get stronger at is the numbers piece. If you can, and the financial numbers piece, because if you can't even sell 5 cakes and start to be able to track at that small amount what your cash flow is, what your break even point is, forget if you have overnight success and all of the sudden your business takes off and you're chasing, having to figure all that stuff out on the back end, plus adding the layer of marketing and all of the metrics and numbers you have to understand for marketing, it's going to create overwhelm, right? So the other thing I would say to help creatives too is this is not something that you need to do by yourself. This is something, especially if you're a female creative, that you can find 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 girlfriends or strategic alliances, people that you meet online and say, hey, I want to get stronger with regard to my analytical side of my business, with the metric side of my business, with the number side of my business. But when I try to do it myself, it is boring as hell. Why don't we connect over Skype, connect over Zoom, get some coffee, whatever the case may be. And if you can spend 1 hour every 2 weeks talking about this with other women and other creatives, number one, you're like, okay, this is going to make me accountable to ensure that I look at this stuff instead of put it off. 2, the more you talk about something, the more you study something, the more familiar you become with it. 3, just the fact that you're doing it as a group is going to feel like you see your progress sooner than if you try to do it on your own. So that's what I would say, like Smart Women Finish Rich, or maybe even Denise Duffield Thomas has a great book that everybody loves, Lucky Bitch. I haven't read that yet, but get a financial book and start looking at the financial aspect of the business first, and definitely get 2 or 3 other women or girlfriends together so that you can start talking about this. And it's all about making it manageable. And Brooke, I am going to ask you to chime in because I'm doing a lot of talking, but you don't want to go extreme in your business and only focus on this. It has to be manageable so that you can implement it.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I love the idea of getting girlfriends together. I have a small, we call it the mastermind, but it's not like a typical mastermind of just 6 of us. And it's just where we can talk about things and say, I'm really struggling with this. What do you do? What do you think would be appropriate? And it's so nice to have someone to go to talk to about these challenges. And I love the focus on financials. I think that that's really, really important. I see so many people, especially in my industry, asking someone to give them their pricing so they can basically duplicate it. And it doesn't work. I am a very, very open book. I will share everything I know with someone, but sharing my pricing will not help you. You need to know your costs.
Right.
You need to know the time that goes into something, the packaging, the everything that goes into it. And if I give you that information for me, it's not going to help you and it's not going to work for you. So I agree completely. I see it all the time, and people get mad at me when I say no, but it's so important. So let's talk about with the whole pricing and knowing your numbers kind of thing. Let's talk about time, because I feel like this is something that people don't build into their pricing. And it kind of plays into, I recently did an episode on productivity, and it also plays into kind of getting out from behind the computer. What is your time worth? What do you need to calculate to go into your pricing? How do you feel about that? And do you calculate your time into your price?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember one time I worked and I advised a dear friend from college. And by that point, we had client calls, and any client call that we had, I was deducting from the retainer. And she was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, we're having a phone call with them. They're our client. I said, yes, but we're talking about the strategy. We're talking about our next steps. We're dealing with their objections. I mean, listen, I would say that, with regard to time and pricing, it's helpful to understand what a baseline is for your industry, but also keep in mind that there is like a thrifty price, if you will, or more of like a budget shopper price. There is like that moderate, what's like the overall average price. And then there's always going to be luxury and premium pricing. And you have to decide, as a business owner with a brand, which of those are you? Are you more of the like budget, lower end price point? Do you want to be like, hey, I am the industry average, so, I'm not going to be sitting here like negotiating with somebody who wants to pay less than that? Or are you that premium brand? And it's interesting. There's a whole psychology with pricing. And this is coming from somebody who, when I first started out, with consulting, I charged like $35 an hour, right? And I remember my father, and I remember a doctor client of mine who was like a mentor, my dad saying, at the end of the day, when you factor driving to and from your clients, all the emails that you answer, talking to them on the phone and doing the work, plus paying your taxes, my dad's like, you might be making about $10 at the end of the day per hour. And on the flip side, the doctor client that mentored me was like, $30 is too much for me to pay. And I had to really stand in my power at that moment. And I said, and I had also been doing like my University of Miami, go Canes, had this alumni entrepreneur group. And I remember my advisor made me cry because he was like, why are you pricing yourself like you're Walmart? You're not Walmart. You might think you could scale. So all of this to say, here I had my dad telling me my pricing, was too low. I had the advisor, but then I had a client that was telling me the price was too high. And I had to decide in that moment, which of those brands do I want to be? These days, I have packages that are like more average pricing because I do teach and my students graduate after 10 weeks. I have some, products or some offerings that are more moderate for them. But anybody else outside of that scope is getting a premium price because my time is limited at this juncture, right? So I only have a couple of hours in the week to consult. I've also paid my dues and earned or been credentialed, had enough experience to command, a little bit more of a premium price. So I would say that you have to remember that pricing is a progression. What you charge right now will not be likely what you charge down the line. And it really boils down to what are the costs? At the end of the day, how much time does something take you? So I'm a big fan of, maybe if you're just starting out, like beta testing and seeing how long something actually takes you. I'm a big fan of also, not only are you going to put in your packages what things cost, but I learned the hard way. You need to have a cushion. You need to have like 15 to 20% in the event that, something goes wrong, a software crashes. My sister hired a photographer. All the files somehow disappeared. You make sure you have that cushion so that if you have to go back and do the work again or fix something, that you had that built into the price to begin with.
That is huge. And I know that especially for someone that sells a service, but then a product on top of it, if something happens with the product, the shipping goes wrong or it doesn't show up and you have to overnight it somewhere, it is so important to have that cushion. And so many people don't build that into their pricing. I think that we don't think that far ahead a lot of times, and we kind of set ourselves up to be surprised. And it's better to be prepared than to be surprised, unless it's a good surprise.
That's a tweetable. I love that. That's a tweetable.
It's better to be prepared than surprised, unless it's like a fabulous surprise party or a present. I don't know. I have a question that I am asked almost daily, and I know my answer, but I would love to hear your answer as well. Do you believe that blogging is still relevant?
Yes, I do. I definitely do, and here's why. There's a little thing that we all use every day called Google. And so here's the reason why people who believe blogging isn't relevant. They see the trend of people scrolling Instagram, maybe browsing Pinterest. We have shifted to, we are still searching, but our attention span for search has been spread. Whereas Google used to be the primary place that we went. If I wanted to look up, like this weekend, I was looking up outfit inspiration. I usually go to Google, Instagram, and Pinterest. Most people aren't going to go across 3 different platforms. They're going to stick with one, stick with what's easy for them and what they like, right? However, where blogging is still really relevant is this idea of organic search, or what I like to teach my students as being non-branded search. A lot of people get disenchanted with blogging because they're like, people aren't finding me. But if your content strategy is that the only way people can find you through Google search is by knowing your name or something specific to your business, well, then you're right. People aren't going to find you. What we need to think about is content creators. And it doesn't matter if you're doing this for YouTube. It doesn't matter if you're doing this for Twitter, for your podcast, or even for your blog content, is what are those, non-branded terms, those queries? What are those things somebody is going to go into Google and type into the browser? So you need to understand that, going back to what we started off with talking about, like audience and segments, one of your segments could be people who have never heard of your brand or business, but because they go to Google and they type in, Denver photographer or Denver photographer for female entrepreneurs, they find you. And the way that you're able to influence that is through blogging. The other thing I will say about this is traditionally blogging was, hey, you have X amount of words per content and you publish and post this across, WordPress or another outlet or source. But I want to remind you that you can still have multimedia for your blog posts. So you could take like a carousel of Instagram photos that you shared on Instagram and turn that into a narrative for a blog post. You can take a podcast interview and put that up on your site as a piece of content, as a blog post. You could take, a YouTube video and it's on your YouTube channel and then embed it on your blog for a blog post. Again, I'm going to invite every single person listening to this to answer, if somebody doesn't know me, what do I need to make sure I'm ranking for with regard to that search query that they're going to type into Google so that they can find me? But that is why blogging is still really, really relevant, besides the fact that it is a place for you to position your expertise and maybe even build up a writing portfolio if you ever want to have another revenue stream, and writing is something that you want. Or if anybody on this is listening and wants to be an author, it's one thing to want to do it. It's another thing to be a really good writer. So what better place to get practice than through your blog? So for all of those reasons, Google search, leveraging the idea of multimedia content, connecting with people who've never even heard of you or followed you on Instagram or Twitter to begin with, and honing your writing chops, blogging is still relevant in my book.
Absolutely. I agree completely. My blog is huge when it comes to SEO. I teach SEO. It is so important. It's not the only thing you should be doing, but it is so important when reaching out to people who you may not have never met, like you said, that have never heard of you. And it's something that is overlooked. And a lot of people will ask me, do I absolutely have to have a blog? And my answer is no, you don't have to, because you run your business, you make the rules, but it will be hugely beneficial. And one thing that we are moving towards as a culture, Amazon Alexa is one of them, Google Home, all of these little home devices that are, in my opinion, a little creepy, but I have 3 of them in my house. And, but the voice search is huge. And when you can harness the words that someone else might be asking these silly devices and put that on your blog, that could be huge for you in terms of being found. And that voice search is not going anywhere. It's only going to get bigger. And your blog is the opportunity to really reach out and create content that could potentially be searched word for word by someone sitting at home in their chair talking to Alexa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you got Siri, you've got Alexa, you've even got Apple Watches. All those things are actually called the Internet of Things, and we're only going to see them becoming more and more prevalent.
Yes, definitely. I agree completely. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about getting out from behind those things.
I'm all for that. I am all for that.
I had this notion when I first started my business that I will set up a website and set up a Facebook page and people will just book me. They're just going to come. Clients will just find me and it will be amazing and everything will be happy. And it didn't work that way. And I work with so many students that feel the same way and they don't understand why they're not being booked. And something that I learned pretty early was to get out from behind my computer, behind the screen, put on some hair and makeup, put on some nice shoes, get out of the yoga pants, and go to a networking event where you can actually talk with people and meet people and learn more about what they do. And again, that really goes back to relationships.
Absolutely. I mean,
no.
Sorry, go ahead. I was jumping in there. I was like,
no, I totally, I, you know how I feel about it. I know how you feel. I think it's so important. What can you share with people who are afraid to meet new people in person, get out from behind that computer, and how can they overcome that fear?
I mean, it is common, even for extroverts. You either have somebody who's extremely extroverted in real life, who's terrified of the visibility component online, or you have somebody who's really introverted, in real life, and they thrive being an extrovert online. So, the first thing I would say is it's all about quality, not quantity, right? So what you and I would advise is that, you don't want to try to hit up like 5 or different networking events per week, right? But if you could go to 1 or 2 events a month, even one, it's all about the quality, right? Can you find a group that you can build some rapport with and some trust with? Like, just like anything else, I think consistency is so key. And that's one of the things that people tend to overlook with networking. Like, I really grew my business initially through relationships and networking, but it wasn't that I went to a different event every single, month. I really picked like 2 organizations, and they were 2 organizations that I was like, I'm going to commit to these organizations for a year. And I'm not here to get something out of this. One of my organizations was cause oriented. So I always think that doing something that's going to be beneficial for your community and allow you to meet people is great. The second one was more professional. Both of them resulted in I'd meet somebody at a coffee or at like a fashion event, and they'd hear what I do. And then like 3 weeks later, I'm getting a message on LinkedIn that's like, we need to refer you because my friend's looking for these services. And it's just like anything else. It's people have told me before, and I love the analogy. It's like dating. Yes. If you go on a date, if you keep going on like a series of ongoing first dates, you don't ever feel comfortable. You don't ever build trust. You're like, well, I don't know if this person's in it for the long term. But, as you start to date somebody more and more, you're like, oh, I see a future with this person. And networking is the same. That's why you don't want to go and be like, oh, I'm going to pass out my business card and I'm going to go to another different event next week. And then I'm going to go to another different event. Really pick 1 or 2 organizations that you can commit to for like at least 6 months. Keep it really simple for yourself. Consistency and quality of relationships are going to help you. And then as far as the shy factor, you just need to talk to one person, really. I mean, find your icebreaker. Ask somebody where they've recently traveled to. I always tell my students too, I've had several students that are afraid to speak in public. You know what makes people feel so comfortable? When you admit that up front. Go to a networking event and tell somebody, oh, I'm an introvert, and own that and see what they say. They might be like, oh, I'm an introvert too, or my significant other's an introvert. So those would be my suggestions. Just show up and, be open and admit, like, I'm really bad at this, or it's not my favorite thing, or whatever the case may be. And consistency is key.
Absolutely. I call that drive-by carding. When people just walk into a networking event and like pass out their card and disappear. And I'm like, where did you even go? I didn't even get to meet you. It drives me crazy. Building, again, it goes back to that relationship. How can you build a relationship? And when I was so nervous going to these events, I remember making a goal for myself before I went in. I want to meet one makeup artist, or I want to meet one specific person. And I didn't even know if that person would be there. But you know what? It forced me to get out and say hello to people because I was looking for that one makeup artist. And it can be so scary, but getting out from behind that computer is so important and so overlooked. We feel like everything can be done online. I know I just ordered my groceries for delivery today. So we live in a culture where so many things are online, but you can't keep everything there.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that wouldn't be cool. Life wouldn't be, you need the human connection to even make the online piece work. So remember that. We're never going to replace people, with the exception of the checkout counter. But even still, when you go through one of those automated checkout counters, how foolproof is it? And how foolproof is it? And how, if there was a person there, it'd be sometimes it'd be more efficient, right? Like, how many times have you had to deal with an error that the computer created that human error would have never, humans would have anticipated or been able to fix? So I'm with you. And I also think another piece of this too is you have to get offline. Like, as a creative person, I am big about on the weekends turning off my phone, not touching my computer. Whether I own a business or not, it doesn't matter. You cannot have this, world drain you from finding inspiration in your real world and what's around you as well.
Absolutely. I also love what you said about going into it with more of a service mindset. And I try to teach my students, when you approach another business as a potential partner, always have in mind what you can do to serve them. How can you add value to their business, to their lives? And of course, with that in mind, you have to set certain boundaries in place. Don't be a doormat, but go into it with an attitude of service. And how can I serve, whether it's an organization or a business or a person, how can I add value to their lives will change your business exponentially.
I agree. And I want to add one little thing too, that I feel like, we have to remember the rules of etiquette. And I hate to say that, but I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails or texts from people. We don't know what's happening, business owner or not, in someone's life. And the simplest way to open up a conversation, even if you're looking to partner with somebody or you're looking to pitch somebody, whatever it is, how are you?
Absolutely.
What's new? What's going on with you? How are you? I get so many texts or emails. Can you recommend a marketing book? Or, hey, I've got this thing I want to show you or introduce to you. And it's like, life happens outside of business too. And if you're service oriented, you're going to be thinking about, this is a person that I'm dealing with. This person could be having the time of their life, but this person could also be dealing with some pretty difficult stuff too. How can I be caring or compassionate first and foremost, and also at the same time, obtain what I'm looking to achieve too?
Absolutely. I'm sure you're familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert. Her podcast, Magic Lessons, she said that she loves to ask people a specific question. Totally stole it with permission. She said we could. But I love to ask people, what are you most excited about right now? Figure out a question that you can ask people and learn who they are on a non-business level, because building that relationship that is more than just a business will transcend any changes that could potentially happen. People close their businesses, they change, they move into different places, and that relationship will still be there if you have nurtured it and set yourself up for that, instead of just, what do you do? That question drives me crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What do you do, or what can you do for me? Here's what I want. Imagine if the world operated based upon what every other person needed or wanted first. Where would we be? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And serving others is it's such a difference. When I really, really changed my why into affecting my clients' lives in a positive way, things changed so much. So much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I absolutely love this. I wanted to talk a little more. I know, I feel like I've been all over the place here, like shiny object syndrome. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, both sides of your business. So the creative side and the linear analytical side. Do you believe that both sides can be nurtured appropriately so that a creative can be truly happy in running their own business?
I mean, listen, I feel like we are demonstrating both sides at play, right? And it doesn't have to fit into this box at all. What, like you said so beautifully, what works for you for pricing, what works for you for marketing may not work for somebody else. And why is that? Because our souls have to be in alignment. I do want to say that there's a lot of creatives who are brilliant creatives, but being an entrepreneur is a whole other endeavor. So some people may find through the process of trying to be an entrepreneur and exploring it that it's really not what lights them up. Your happiness barometer is not going to lie to you, right? So what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, the business itself, I want you to think about that business as if it's a child, as if it's another person. It isn't, the operations and the systems and all that. I want you to think about it like, what do I need to do to feed and nurture this other source of energy? And when you think about a person, that's really what you're committing to. And the business is going to grow. And it's going to grow from this small, tightly held, like contained space or services or products to, maybe that like a toddler to that young adult to that teenager,
Yes.
depending upon how long you want to do it. So I would say that I think from my perspective, it's been imperative for me to embrace the business side, but not in a way that I'm replicating what somebody else does, and not in a way that I'm creating overwhelm in my life. If you can pick one business thing every month to get stronger at, I think there's somebody I heard brilliantly say, like, it's all about the simplicity and the power of one. Instead of trying to do everything and get everything done at once, how can you do one thing and do one thing really, really well and then build up your strength? If any of you have ever run a marathon before, you know that you have to be able to run 1 mile, then run the 2 miles before you can run the 26 miles. So think of, getting more integrated as a entrepreneur, as a marathon run and not a sprint. And that's really what it's about, integration. I've seen people who have come to me before, my students, that are like, I have no analytical, logical, thought processes in my brain, and we've pulled it out of them for themselves, right? The other thing I want to caution people against, and I've seen this myself, Brooke, is that I used to be so right-brained, and now it's almost like I have to every now and then go do karaoke or something to like shake up and get back in touch with that creative. Maybe it's, really playing with my nail polish, because like now I almost skew on the more left side than I do the right side. And maybe that's coming through in the podcast or not. But the first thing I think a lot of creatives really with business tend to be defiant against is starting to put things down on paper, starting to put things down in a calendar, the organization piece. You're laughing because it's true, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me what comes up for you.
I have to use colored pens because it makes it less painful.
There you go. I have to use both the Google Calendar, my iPhone calendar, and a physical day timer that I write things down in to try to organize myself, and it still is a beautiful mess, right? Like, I'm definitely a lot more organized than I was. One of my favorite tools, I would say, to help. So we all heard about accounting and taxes and keep your receipts, which I do. You'll start to, see you become like a hoarder in ways you never knew. But GoDaddy bookkeeping has been a game changer for me to start looking at my numbers. Look at your freaking numbers every Friday, every Monday, like one day a week. Look at those numbers. Number one, you'll see if anybody's, replicated your information or fraudulently gotten access to your bank account. Number two, you'll start being like, oh my God, I spent this past week. I brought this in this past week. And using a system like GoDaddy bookkeeping, for me, even at tax time, it tells me based upon all the cash you've deposited in the bank account, the credit cards that have come in, this is what your estimated taxes are. Based upon all your expenses, this is what your profit is. So find things that are going to make it visual for you, which is why I love what you shared about the colored pencils too.
I love that. I think that sounds like an amazing tool. I actually have a bookkeeper that gives me the visuals, which is what I need personally, because I need someone that I can go, what the heck? But there are so many different tools, and you just have to know yourself really well and know what works for you, because everyone's a little different.
Yes, but the integration is critical. I mean, if you talk to Google, look at some of your favorite brands that aren't here anymore. And if you look at like what went wrong, more often than not, they'll tell you we had an awesome concept, we had a great brand and team, but the business model wasn't there or the financials weren't there. And that's why it is important to integrate. Nobody's saying be something you're not, right? Look at Sophia Amoruso and what happened with Nasty Gal. Like, that was a business built on, I feel like I'm yelling, but, that was like a business built on creativity and like a vision. However, another company came and acquired her, and they were trying to figure out the business model. And before you know it, Nasty Gal, which created a cult following, was worth millions of dollars, inspired #girlboss, bankrupt,
Yes.
gone. So that should tell you why it's important.
Absolutely. So many businesses fail because they don't measure these things. And I want so much to just help everyone succeed in their business, because it really is an opportunity to design a life that you love. When you work for someone else, you don't always get that opportunity. And sometimes you do. And some people are better suited for that, but you don't have the flexibility to design it yourself. It is very different, just kind of a different mindset overall. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Jaclyn. I am so excited. You should see I have a full page of notes in my pink pens. Because I just...
Send me a picture. I love it.
It's so funny, the random chicken scratch that I write down. But thank you for being here. I absolutely love what you have to say. Where can people find you? What do you have going on? What do you want to share with anyone that's listening?
Well, first, I want to thank you very much for having me, inviting me. And I wanted to share that we met at a networking event. So that should be some hopeful incentive for everybody to get out there and collaborate and meet that quality person. In terms of finding me, I'm a multi-passionate, right? So most of my time I'm spending teaching, and I am now creating some online programs and everything. My home base is my website, www.jaclynmullenmedia.com. Little fun teaser behind the scenes. You guys are kind of being the first to hear this. I might be changing the URL to Just Ask Jack and possibly launching a podcast. But home base is there. I blog there. And then on Instagram, the socials, and my Facebook page, it's my name, Jaclyn Mullen. So I'm going to spell that Jaclyn, M as in Michael, Ullen. Please drop me a note. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of, what you learned from, our podcast. And again, Brooke, thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to see what you do. I think that you're just going to rock it, and it's going to be amazing. Not a doubt in my mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, listeners. I hope that you are enjoying this beautiful weather. Get out of the house, away from your computer, away from your phone. Put in some awesome music and just smell the fresh air, because seriously, it's that time of year. And if you have any questions, let me know. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and leave a review. I know that the reviews take a little bit of time, but they really do mean the world. And we're going to start having a prize for the review of the week, because I'm waiting for FedEx right now, and they should get here today. So subscribe on iTunes, leave a review, and join me at www.businessstraightup.com. So that is www.businessstraightup.com. And the show notes will be there as well at www.businessstraightup.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for listening to Business Straight Up. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Check out the show notes for this and all of the episodes at businessstraightuppodcast.com. And I can't wait to talk with you again. Have a great day.